Welcome to Ray Reads, a podcast where I talk about the books I'm currently reading like I'm in a sad little one-man book club. For this episode of Ray Reads, I will be discussing The Ruin of Kings by Jenn Lyons. As always, spoiler alert for this book and the next two books in this series. The first thing that I have to say about this book is that I love the format it's in. I have never read a fantasy novel like this before. The transcript from the conversation between Kieran and Talon, paired with Dervishar's annotations, enhances the world building of this story. This record of events skillfully merges the reader with this world and its complex history. The annotations also provide some insight to Dervishar's character. As Lord Heir of House Dolores, it's unsurprising that Dervishar is a scholar. It is clear through his notes that he has a deep love for knowledge. He just can't help but discuss history and politics, his own research and hypotheses. Dervishar laments the lack of education in the world and has to correct Kieran's assumptions multiple times. Dervishar is first to work with evil men, Gadrith, Darzan, and Raylospar, but we get glimpses of his compassion and the person he could be without his gauche and vile master. To get back to the format of the story, I love how the tale of the past is split. There is never a dull moment, and each half of the past is so compelling and packed with intrigue. And then the characters are simply fantastic too. Tarith is my favorite. While Corinne has a few love interests, Moria, Kalindra, and Janelle, Tarith is the one who holds the role of a typical love interest as he influences our hero to become a better person. Tarith is obviously attracted to Corinne, and he cares deeply for him. After he first meets Corinne and finds out that Juval was the one who had him gauged, Tarith offers to kill the slave master on his behalf, showing his own way that he cares. Although he is an assassin of the Black Brotherhood, Tarith is one of the most moral characters here. He shoulders the burdens of the sins of his father Tarandel, as well as the sins of his own past life as Atron Kandor. Tarith despises everything the Queros Empire stands for. He may be a killer for hire, but he's also an abolitionist. He explains to Kieran, "For every life I take, I give others their lives back." Kieran makes for a great main character because of all of his flaws. He is somewhat uneducated, but always willing to learn, as seen when he decides he wants to learn how to heal from Lady Mia, and then on Ysthanana with his weapons and magic training. But more than that, over the course of these 4 years, Kieran must confront his own toxic masculinity and bigotry. He violently denies his attraction to Tarith, ashamed of his own feelings. This is interesting because his brother/nephew, Galen, had come out to Kieran as gay, and Kieran had seemed to have had no trouble accepting him. Anyway, another fascinating character is Tyenso. It's refreshing to see a badass woman in her 30s just killing it. I hope to see her do great things as the new Empress of the Queros Empire. As a random little side note here, I think it's a bit strange how Dervishar addresses the record of events to Empress Tyenso as if she hadn't been a great part of the story here. But whatever. In spite of the fact that she had summoned the succubus, who was Zaltaraf in disguise, to gauge Kieran, he can't help but think of her as a friend. He appreciates her for always being straight and forthcoming with him. Tyenso is a powerhouse who deserves more recognition, and she knows it. She came so incredibly close to defeating Gadrith on her own. The first time Kieran ever saw her smile is when she contemplates how she can destroy Avdadar Laka, a feat that would have been impossible for most people. One character I desperately want to know more about is Serdier, Kieran's adoptive father, the blind musician. Dervishar remarks multiple times in his annotations that he suspects Serdier had orchestrated events to work out the way they did. For example, it is more than likely that he made himself seem extremely against Kieran visiting the High General, only to push his son to want to go even more. We know that Serdier worked with the Griffin men, and that he had enchanted Ola to ensure her cooperation. I really want to know more about his motivation behind all this. It's interesting how little we learn of Sergei in this book when it's jam-packed with foreshadowing for everything else. What I love about this book is that you have to read it a couple times over to really get everything. There's a lot of clues and little bits of information sprinkled throughout this book that are further examined in the next books of the series. For instance, Thurvashar drops several hints regarding his witch gifts, like when he remarks that he has his own reasons for being fascinated with mimics and their ability to read minds, or when he warns Talon when they capture Kieran that he was thinking of running. And Sharanikal, otherwise known as the Old Man, offers some insight to Kieran's past life. Another significant reveal comes from Taja, the goddess of luck, when she confides in Kieran that she regards Raylosfar as a threat because he is the high priest of her worst nightmare. This backs up the plot twist in the second book. One more thing that's more relevant in the sequel is how Kieran instantly recognizes the resemblance between Zaltarath's dream girl Janelle and Taya, the goddess of magic. To finish up, I just have to complain about one small thing. There are several point of views shown in this story, and they're all interesting and make sense, except for one. And that one is Kame, a prostitute in the capital city. Even knowing about Thurvashar's witch gift, it doesn't make much sense that he got a hold of her perspective in the first place, when she dies immediately after she's introduced. It doesn't really make sense to include her perspective at all, really. It feels like fiction in the wrong way for this story, and it does nothing to advance the plot. It would have been better to show someone else's perspective, like Jareth, since we have reason to care about him in this situation. He is someone we know, someone readers should probably care about. And he's a soldier. He would have been fighting the demons out there, as was shown. It's how he died. We could have had his perspective on this instead of Kame's, and I think that would have added a lot more to the story. But for whatever reason, Thurvashar decides to add in this little section from some nobody prostitute. But, whatever, I guess. Overall, I think this is one of my favorite series of all time. These are books that I can come back to time and time again, and still learn something new with each reread. The first two books especially demonstrate how well crafted this incredible tale is, as they are both set in this same 4-year time period, and all these crazy events are happening simultaneously parallel. It's just crazy. And I am just dying to find out how this last book ends.